Well, this is my welcome to my spoiler discussion of Endgame. And also happy May the 4th, everybody. At the time of me recording this, and I probably will upload this later on in the day. So let's talk about it. Spoiler thoughts. Yeah, I am really happy about all the the little callbacks and all the little nods to the MCU that they had, because this is the big finale to everything that's been building since Iron Man, and I am really happy with all the little callbacks they have. But first, in order to address those callbacks, we gotta talk about the plot. We open the movie. It's 22 days after the event of the decimation, and we see an opening in which Hawkeye is teaching is with his kids and his wife. However, they all died due to the decimation. We then cut 22 days after the events of Infinity War. Captain Marvel was able to find Tony and Nebula floating in space and was able to bring them back to Earth. And when Tony and Steve finally meet, they end up arguing about what happened. And not only that, but not only does Tony bring up the line in Civil War in which Steve said, "If we lose, we'll lose together," he also brought up a point that he made in Age of Ultron about how he wanted to get the entire world a suit of armor, but how Steve didn't approve of it, and all the other people didn't approve of it either. And as many people, a lot of you guys know, I actually think Age of Ultron is probably one of the weaker MCU films, but it's amazing about how they're actually able to sort of improve the flaws of some of the weaker films, which is really cool. Then they end up finding Thanos, and they end up finding him with the Infinity Gauntlet still on, but without the stones. Because as he put it, he used the stones to destroy the stones, which is what we're led to believe until either the writers or the directors confirmed that Thanos actually shrunk them down to such a small level people couldn't find them, because without the Infinity Stones, the universe would go out of whack, as put by the Ancient One later on in the movie. And eventually, Thor did what he should have done in Infinity War, and he went for the head and decapitated Thanos. We then cut to 5 years later. Everything is just going terrible. I think this is probably, as Abed from Community would put it, this is definitely the darkest timeline, because Cap's teaching a therapy group, with people trying to struggle with, what happened, with people being dead. Black Widow's a shut-in, and Cap is also kind of depressed. Iron Man is done with the superhero stuff and has a kid now with Pepper. Bruce was actually able to. He's now what I like to call Professor Hulk, in which he has the mind of Bruce Banner but the body of the Hulk. Thor got it worst of all. He's in Norway, New Asgard. I think at one point one of the characters, I think it was Tony who called him Lebowski, because he's essentially the big Lebowski. He has an overgrown beard. He just wears he has sunglasses. He's an overweight alcoholic who just sits in his room all day playing video games and eating pizza with Korg and Meek. Also love how the fact that they ended up bringing Korg and Meek back. That was really cool. And, Captain Marvel's outfit is different from the opening of the film, and we see she's got a different haircut too. Rocket's wearing his comic-accurate costume and all that other stuff. Everything has just gone to crap. Everything's just gone to hell, is essentially what's happened. We then cut to the van, Ant-Man's van, and we see a rat push some butt, end up running across, the equipment that they had, and Scott is freed from the quantum realm. So our Lord and Savior, the greatest hero of the movie, was a rat. And not only that, but I also find it really cool that the actor from Community, Senior Chang, he was actually the security guard that let Scott get his stuff back. And the actress who played Shirley actually appears later on, because the directors Anthony Joe Russo actually were executive producers and directed a couple episodes of Community. Because Abed, the actor who played Abed, was in Winter Soldier. Donald Glover, he was in Spider-Man Homecoming. And Brie Larson was actually in a couple Community episodes, which is a fun fact. But anyways, Scott ends up finding that he was apparently one of the ones who went missing. And he finds Cassie, who's older now. Because last time we see her, she's like a little kid. Now she's almost a young adult now. And Scott realizes that time has passed, and this is not good. But then he finds the Avengers, and he tells them the idea about how he was in the quantum realm for 5 years, but to him it felt like 5 hours, saying that time travel works differently in the quantum realm than it does there. So he's thinking that they could possibly pull off, as he puts it a time heist to go back in time and prevent whatever Thanos did. And when they go to Tony about it, Tony's like, no, because what if something goes wrong? Because this is 5 years after the events of Infinity War, as he puts it, because he has a kid now. He doesn't want all those 5 years to go away because that would essentially mean erasing his daughter. And he doesn't want that to happen. But then Tony ends up figuring out a way how to do it without erasing the 5 years. But then we pretty much see everybody coming back. We see the remaining heroes trying to recruit Hawkeye, who's become a ruthless vigilante, and he goes by his Ronin persona now. For a while, Hawkeye's gone by different names. He went by the Swordsmith of Ronin, Swordmaster, I think. But anyways, they recruit all the heroes, and they decide that they're going to time travel to different points in reality. And they essentially state the fact that time travel works differently in the MCU. Instead of causing the future to completely change, it will just create an alternate timeline. And they don't want that to happen. And they're trying their best, not to interact with their past selves, just like in Back to the Future and all those other time travel movies. And then everybody's there except for Captain Marvel, because she's off trying to help other worlds who have dealt with these tragedies. And they decide that they're going to take the Infinity Stones from the past, bring them here, bring back all the dead heroes, act like nothing happened, then they're going to return the Infinity Stones back. Simple as that. And they're divided into 3 teams. Tony, Steve, and Scott will go back, and Hulk will go back in time to the Battle of New York in 2012, and they'll get the Mind Stone, the Space Stone, and Time Stone from the Ancient One, who's still alive at this point. Thor and Rocket would go back to 2013 to get the Reality Stone from the events of Thor: The Dark World, and Hawkeye, Black Widow, Nebula, and War Machine would go back in time to get the Power Stone and the Soul Stone. Simple as that. Well, things go wrong. For example, when they try and get the Space Stone, they end up losing the Space Stone in 2012. Loki ends up disappearing. And not only that, but from what I've heard, the Disney Plus shows, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, which is a Vision and Scarlet Witch series, Loki, and What If, all these other Marvel shows on Disney Plus will directly deal with the aftermath of this. My guess is the fact that that's the Loki that we're going to be following for the Disney Plus show, because the current Loki is currently dead. Permanently, I think. But anyways, there's that. So Steve and Tony decide that they're going to go back in time to the 70s in order to get that stone back and more pin particles to get back. And we see Stanley's final cameo in the MCU is him de-aged from the 70s and him saying, "Hey man, make love, not war," as he drives by. And Tony actually shares a little moment with his father before he leaves, and they all get those stones, and Hulk is able to convince the Ancient One to get the Time Stone from her. And then we cut to 2013, in which, Thor and Rocket are trying to get the thing. Thor's still having a hard time dealing with this because the day they go back to is the day his mother died. Also really love about the fact that they're actually sort of able to bring back Natalie Portman for this. Even though it's technically archival footage of her, she's still technically in this. But they're able to get it back, and Thor's actually able to share a nice little moment with his mother, which is really nice because we got to know more about, his mother, but, before she died. And he actually summons Mjolnir, and he finds out he's still worthy and that there's still hope left. And then we cut back to 2014, in which we see the opening of the Guardians of the Galaxy from the point of view of Nebula and War Machine, because without that music, it just looks like Quill's just dancing like an idiot. And also, I want to point out the fact that there's a lot of funny jokes in here, for example, the joke that they make about, Cap's butt and his 2012 Avengers uniform was super dope. And also love that little callback in the elevator scene in which they're in the elevator and you think it's going to be another Winter Soldier type thing in which he fights all the guys in there. But then he uses his future knowledge to Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. He says, "Hail Hydra." And then he gets the Mind Stone back, and then he fights his past self. He then erases his memory with the Mind Stone, and then they leave. And then they eventually get the Power Stone, but something goes wrong, because 2014 Nebula, her interface and her, memory bank ends up interfacing with present-day Nebula's memories, meaning 2014 Thanos, Gamora, and Nebula are aware of what they're doing. And when Hawkeye and Black Widow try and go to Vormir in order to get the Soul Stone, they realize one of them has got to die. And Black Widow is the one that dies in order to get the Soul Stone. And when they come back and get all the stones, and when Hulk actually did it with the Iron Man style Infinity Gauntlet. Also love how the fact that when he used the gauntlet, it was on his right hand. When Thanos used it, it was on his left hand. That's cool. But Hulk said that he tried to bring Natasha back, but he just couldn't. Like, he couldn't bring back that death. Which, I understand why people are going to be upset about that. I think that, as the writers put it, this closes out her story nicely because she knew that she had to save people. Hawkeye obviously couldn't die because he's got a Disney Plus show and he's got a family, so that makes sense. Although I am bummed that she died, I do understand why they did it. And then eventually, back to everything, when everybody's, regrouping, 2014 Thanos actually had 2014 Nebula impersonate herself as the present-day Nebula, so she rigged it so that way Thanos could be able to bring in his ship and his armada with him. And after Hulk ends up bringing back all the dead heroes, and Scott's like looking at the trees like, oh hey, the birds are back. Thanos just destroys Avengers Mansion. Like, he destroys the Avengers base. And we actually sort of see an homage to the original Secret Wars comics from 1984, in which Hulk is trying to hold up the debris so that way people wouldn't, die or whatever. And then War Machine, like, he's trying to be able to help Rocket because he's crushed under this debris, and Ant-Man's trying to rescue him. It's like, hold on, I'm coming. And then we get cut to Thor, Cap, and Iron Man, the main three of the Marvel Universe, facing off against Thanos, with Thor dual-wielding Stormbreaker and Mjolnir at the same time. And it's super dope. And not only that, but when Thor ends up getting incapacitated, he ends up trying to summon Mjolnir, and Captain America catches it. Cap is worthy of Mjolnir. Something that they set up all the way back in Age of Ultron finally paid off here. Also, one other thing too. Thanos actually ends up destroying Cap's shield in this, which happened in the original Infinity Gauntlet comic. And then Steve hears like a message, and he's like, Cap. And he's like, Sam? And Falcon's like, on your left, which is an homage to the line in which in Winter Soldier, and then we see Black Panther come back. We see all the Ravengers, we see all all of Wakanda, all the dead heroes back to life. And when they stand against Thanos' armada, Cap says, Avengers, assemble! We waited 7 years for this guy to finally say it, and he did. And it was awesome. And it's super dope the fact that also Valkyrie and some of the Asgardians came back to fight too. And it's so cool because they're essentially playing hot potato, like football, in which they're trying to get it as far away from Thanos. Like, Hawkeye ends up having the gauntlet for a little bit, and Black Panther ends up taking the gauntlet, and then Spider-Man's got it, and he's like, and then he's surrounded by all, like, Thanos' guys. He's like, activate instant kill mode, and he ends up, like, killing all these guys. He then rides on Valkyrie's, like, winged Pegasus, which is awesome, and he ends up meeting Captain Marvel, and he's like, hi, I'm Peter Parker, and she's like, hi, Peter Parker, you got something for me? That's really nice, and it's so cool when we get to see, like, all of the lady superheroes basically go up against Thanos. It's super dope. And then eventually Thanos, he's going to use the Infinity Gauntlet to not wipe out half the universe, but to create an entirely new universe with nobody remembering it. Because this is a different Thanos. The Thanos that we saw in Infinity War, it was a villain who thought he was a hero. This Thanos is just a straight up bad guy, plain and simple. And in fact, Doctor Strange, when he's trying to stop something, and they also bring back all the sorcerers too from the academy or whatever, and he motions to Tony the one, because they're in the one future that they win. Iron Man ends up taking all the Infinity Stones and uses them, and Thanos says, I am inevitable, and Tony says, well, I am Iron Man. He snaps his fingers, uses the Infinity Gauntlet, and then he kills all of Thanos' armada, including Thanos himself. And sadly, because the Infinity Stones take a toll on him, Tony passes away. And we cut to Tony's funeral, and we see the original arc reactor that Pepper had for him. Also forgot to mention, Pepper actually showed up in her own suit of armor. And eventually, we see all the people that ends up showing up at Tony's funeral, including the kid from Iron Man 3 showing up, which was super cool that they brought him back. And then eventually, and not only that, but we see a moment between Happy Hogan and Tony's daughter, and she's like, I want a cheeseburger. And he's like, your dad like cheeseburgers. I'm gonna get you all the cheeseburgers I want. Somehow they were able to take the product placement of Burger King from Iron Man and made it into sort of like a teary-eyed moment. I legit, as Chris Evans put it, he cried like 6 times during the movie. Yeah, that's no exaggeration. I'm pretty sure I also cried 6 times during this movie. Hold on one second. I have to get rid of something real quick. Sorry, there was something on the lens. And then eventually Cap ends up bringing back Mjolnir and all the Infinity Stones back to the present. To the past, I mean. But he doesn't come back when he was supposed to. And we see an elderly man by the pond. And we see an elderly Steve Rogers revealing that he stayed back in the past. And he passes off his shield to Sam Wilson. And Sam's like, this feels like it's meant for somebody else. And he's like, and Steve's like, oh, it always was. And I was super happy knowing the fact that Falcon's going to be the new Captain America now. That is super cool. And we see and then we see Steve dance with Peggy back in World War II, finally promising her the dance that he was going to give to her in the first Captain America. He was the first Avenger, so it only makes sense that the movie would close with his happy ending. And we see like all the credit scenes, like past footage of all the movies, and we see the actor's signature there and the character, which was super cool. And there is no post credit scene, but after the credits roll, when it gets the Marvel logo, you just hear tink, 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 which was the sound that Tony was making when he made the first Iron Man suit, bringing it full circle. Wow, this was probably the best superhero movie I've ever seen in my whole life. Definitely worth the $8. Definitely worth the $8 or $9 that it took to pay for this in the 3 hours that I pretty much sat in my seat the whole time. So yeah, this movie was awesome, and yeah. So in case you guys are wondering what I'm probably gonna review next, well, I think I might be reviewing Detective Pikachu, but I'm not confirming that nor denying that. It's a possibility. I think I might review Detective Pikachu next week, but then again, that is a possibility. So yeah, that was my spoiler discussion on Avengers Endgame. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, stay gold.